Hello there. This story may give you, probably wasn't the best angle to start off with. This story may give you a little bit of a giggle. So, I was at a social event the other day. I went to a bar. I'm not opposed to bars, I'm opposed to clubs, I'm opposed to pounding music where I get migraines and headaches and I can't hear myself think. But bars where the music isn't too loud or you can have a civilized conversation, well, relatively civilized conversation with, I'm not opposed to. Not opposed to. And I went with a couple of my friends, and it was we were watching some football, and we went to a bar afterwards. We were watching what game was that? I think it was one of the Newcastle games. Out the boys, and we met some other individuals in this bar, some friends of friends, and we got talking, introducing ourselves. What do you do for work, etc., etc., blah blah blah. So I told them I told this one individual a little bit about my business and what I do, and I framed it under the rubric of self improvement, business, coaching, right? And I showed him my socials, my Twitter socials, because he wanted to follow me. He said, "Oh, you got quite a lot of followers," and he had a little flick through my Twitter feed, and one of the tweets came up, which was something to the affinity of masturbation makes you weak. Right, I can't remember exactly which one it was. It might have been something. I know it was ejaculation makes you weak, staying horny makes you powerful. What a line, eh? And that always does very, very well because it's a very polarizing piece of writing. And he asked me, "Well, what do you mean by this?" Right? And I said, "Well, I think that masturbation. I think that touching yourself is very feminine, it's very weak, it's very beta, it's very soy behavior, something to the affinity of that." I don't think I was that direct, right? It's always, for me, guys, it's always an interesting observation. I'm kind of like watching myself and how other people react to some of the points of view that I have, which may be contrary to, let's say, the social norm. And it's always very interesting when we kind of come near those kinds of subjects. This one, for example, and how people will react. It's always an interesting experiment and observation I like to make. You can imagine in social context how funny this is, right? And he said something to the affinity of, well, everybody masturbates, everybody jerks off, everybody watches porn. Don't you watch porn? And I said, no. I said, I don't think it's good for you. That's what I said. Because here's the thing, guys, is I like to be very flippant when I wouldn't say he was confronting me. He was asking questions, but then it got a little bit more, I wouldn't say confrontational, but a little bit more direct, right? And if I'm in a social context, I really don't want to be having these conversations. In fact, if you actually meet me in a social context, you'll be quite surprised. I mean, I like having deep philosophical, spiritual conversations with people. I really, really do. But in that kind of context, I was watching my football team playing, and I was in a kind of more whimsical mood. I just wanted to play, be lighthearted, fun, sarcasm, wit. I mean, I'm English, for goodness sake. If the English aren't sarcastic and witty and have some banter about them, then I'm certainly not English. So I was in that kind of frame of mind, but I could see where the conversation was going. So I was trying to just kind of just nip it and redirect it somewhere else with a little bit more levity, right? And he says to me something to the affinity of you watch porn, and I say no, I don't. I don't think it's very good for you. He says, "No, you're lying to me. You're lying to me. You're obviously lying to me. You're a man. Of course you watch pornography." And I said, "No, I think it's kind of weird. It's weird. I think you're weird if you're saying that, because everybody." He was trying to bring other people into the conversation. This guy doesn't watch porn, right? He's just meeting me, right? I can tell he's kind of like the I hate the term alpha, and that's the wrong word to describe this individual. He was kind of like the social jester, right? He was trying to he was trying to be the instigator of the conversation and the drama and, you know, the engaging. He wanted to be the center of attention. That's center of attention. That's the easiest way to describe it. So he's getting a bit. This guy doesn't work for, you know. So just such a weirdo. So I said, you're trying to tell me. Can't exactly how I phrased it. I phrased it actually very, very well, because there was, you know when something lands very, very well because there's like a 1 or 2 second silence afterwards that kind of like people go, oh, you know, they have that kind of realization. It was something to the affinity of this. I said something like, so let me get this straight. You're trying to convince me that watching 2 other human beings have sex while touching yourself isn't weird. And it was that. It was that silence, right? And you sort of went, okay, I've got kind of get your point, but everybody does that. I said, no. I said, because he was being quite. I'm making it sound like very logical. The conversation go back and forth like this, but there was some nuance to the conversation. But it got me to the point where I basically said, because this guy was starting to irritate me now, so I needed to get rid of him. I basically said, no, you're only saying that because the perspective that you're coming from is an extension of where you can't live without it, so you kind of need it, and you need to rationalize it in a way that everybody else needs to watch pornography and masturbate to make yourself feel justified. He really didn't enjoy it. You really didn't enjoy that, and as things do, because I'm not a confrontational individual at all. I really don't enjoy it. In fact, I think it's a waste of time. I think it's just ego smashing against each other, and I really can't be asked for it. So I try to surround myself with individuals who are, you know, more playful, because he was again being a little bit more full on with me. And it just got me thinking about the narratives that are around this particular subjects and the normalcy that the average man will portray it, you know, because it's more interesting for me as I rarely get recognized, but I have been recognized once or twice, and those conversations, especially when meeting, let's say, people who know me with other people who don't know me, and the topic typically goes in that direction, is always a very interesting, unique, and the issue is you're challenging people's narratives of what's normal. You're challenging people's narratives of what's normal, and oftentimes the reaction is quite aggressive, like that individual, particularly if it attacks a repressed feeling of shame. Right? Think about that. If a subject comes up, like, say, don't even take SR, for example. Let's take something like drinking, you know. And if I'm talking to an alcoholic or a previous alcoholic, or having a conversation with a group of people or an alcoholics in the room, and I've always said numerous times that I've never had a problem with alcohol. Never had a problem with alcohol. Alcohol doesn't have any kind of power over me, whatever the case may be. Is you could empathize with that alcoholic who is listening into that conversation about how that might make them feel shame, or might make them feel, some kind of guilt, some kind of darkness, some kind of deep, repressed, negative emotion. And equally with this subject, because I believe it's a problem, I don't just believe, I know it's a problem that's so pervasive in our culture right now, because all you need to do is, after this video, open up your Instagram and you're going to see some OnlyFools woman trying to sell you, her package. That's how pervasive the sexual licentiousness is in our culture, that so many men are addicted to this kind of material. I'm going to offend somebody, and the thing is I didn't want to have the conversation because I knew where it was going to go. I was in a playful mood. I wanted whimsy. I wanted levity, but this individual was really. He was really trying to press me, and his personality type was that he essentially wanted to prove me wrong and make me feel stupid, and kind of I imagine he got his sense of confidence, well-being, and validation by putting other people down, which is probably an extension of the fact that this individual feels intense repressed shame about, their life and who they are. Right? I get it. I could see it from a mile off. Most people could see it from a mile off in that regard. So typically I don't like engaging those conversations. And I will never be negative to an individual who is struggling with this, because I have a lot of empathy for them, because I was in that similar position. And I will never have any kind of negative feelings towards an individual who accepts that and who tries to move in a direction where they're trying to improve their lives. I will have an opinion about an individual who is being ignorant, deliberately ignorant, because I believe ignorance is sin. And the way I would describe ignorance is that you have to have knowledge that what you're doing is fundamentally wrong, but willfully doing it anyway. Because it's all the reason why it makes it a sin is because of your intention behind it. So let's say, for example, you are, let's say you're I think there's a difference between stealing with the intention to make yourself richer and stealing with the intention to maybe help somebody else. I think those two things are different. I think those two things are fundamentally different. Equally, if you're doing something for the means of your own self-gratification and degeneracy to your body, to your soul, I think that is far more nefarious than an individual who is ignorantly doing it, right? Who's not understanding the ramifications of, fundamentally what they're doing. I think the karmic toll is far greater on those individuals. And again, in social contexts, those conversations are always difficult ones that crop up for me. I often feel like if we are in an in-depth conversation like that people will feel like in some way that I'm looking down on them. I definitely am not. I definitely am not. Because again, I have a lot of empathy for what it feels like to be stuck in that cycle. And also, and here's maybe something that might surprise you or might make you think, oh, Joseph, I'm not sure about that, is I don't really care. I don't really care because it's all it's not in my hands, it's part of God's plan. And I know that might sound really trite. But I can only give people the information to do with what they want, because that's your free will. I'm not going to be able to convince you otherwise of it. Now, I'm not going to not be friends with somebody if they watch porn or if they do heroin or whatever the case might be. I might keep a distance, especially the ones that can impart really poor behavior on me, because that's by osmosis, I'm going to get that. But I'm not going to disregard individuals who don't have the same fundamental beliefs as me. If that makes sense. The same way, I can hang around with, a Muslim or Christian or a Hindu, and we can have a great time. Equally, the beliefs you have around, let's say, paraphernalia, let's just call it paraphernalia, whether or not it's adult material, whether or not it's weed, whether or not it's, cannabis or opioids. Again, I'm going to be sensitive towards how maybe certain behaviors can have an impression on me. But, hopefully people aren't whipping their dick out and jerking off in front of me. That's hopefully not going to happen. But I hope I'm explaining this perspective well. In another thread of thought here, I'm also thinking that, if people ask me for the information, I will always give it, because I think that comes from a perspective of observing an emotion that they don't want to feel because of behavior that they're doing, right? Such as shame, such as guilt, and wanting to move in a more positive direction. I will always support people in that regard. I always have a civilized conversation with that in that regard. But the context is so important for me in how I share information, and equally for you guys, how you share information, because nobody likes that guy at the party who changes things into his personal lecture, right? And starts berating people. Like the guy who always starts to bring up politics at a dinner party, you're going, oh, just stop, right? It's not right. It's not right. Anyway, theories, facts, you decide, brothers. Let me know your thoughts on how you have these kinds of conversations with your friends, because always a challenging one, especially for me, if people know me. Anyway, speak soon.